We are pleased to welcome Pierrick Porchet today in the framework of our déjeuner sociologique. We have a special topic this year, so it's sociology meets Asian studies. And we collaborate with the Confucius Institute, led by Basil Zimmerman, and the Department of East Asian Studies with Maya Todeshini. So each week we have this kind of session. So a short, no, not a short presentation, a 40 minutes presentation, and then a discussion. We are also pleased to welcome Bertrand Franqueur, senior lecturer at the University of Lausanne, working on the management of sports and martial studies. Sports martial studies, or so you are free to present yourself at the moment of the discussion. And this presentation is recorded on our YouTube channel. Only the presentation, and it will be online on the Institute of Sociological Research YouTube channel. So feel free to discuss, to debate at the end of the presentation of the discussion, and we will collect also all questions online. So Pierrick, the floor is yours. Thanks again.
Thank you, Blaise. Thank you all for coming. Hi to Zoom members. I don't know if there is anyone there. So yeah, because I wanted to ask if we were all French-speaking people, I would switch in French, but I think no. So I continue in English. I'm a PhD candidate here at Geneva University. I'm beginning my 6th year of research. I'm writing my manuscript. This is the scary time of the process. I was trained during my bachelor degree and master degree as in Chinese studies. And this background, of course, has an impact on the way I conducted my research for my PhD. Mainly, I think in the beginning, one of the methodological choice that I made was to focus on China and what was happening, especially in the People's Republic of China, in order to limit myself and not like to focus on one point and develop this. So my research and today's topic is Wushu. Wushu is the Chinese Mandarin word to say Chinese martial arts in English. So if we understand this concept as broadly as we can, it would be everything that is practiced in China and that could be called typically Chinese, because Chinese martial arts. So what Chinese people would refer as their traditional culture, and this is something. This is a category that is often used by actors in China, including institutions. And it is also called Wushu, Kung Fu more in the Cantonese area of China and the language area. Of course, these concepts, what is a martial arts, what is Chinese martial arts, why Wushu is used and not Kung Fu, there is huge implication, semiotic also, a semiotic work to be done. Of course, today I will not go into these details because I will focus on a specific groups of Wushu practitioners, which are which are practicing within the framework of elite sports, so Olympic compatible kind of practice, and the way the discourse around these practices is also related to Olympic ideology. I will come back on this. So my PhD research, in a nutshell, in order to understand how these specific practices that I will speak about, and the people and the sites of my fieldwork that I took, in order to understand how I went there and why I ended up observing these people. So one important factor when you want to understand Chinese martial arts as they are practiced and discursively constructed within the People's Republic of China is to take into account what the scholarship has largely explored, which is the instrumentalization of what is referred to as traditional culture, which is practices, art practices or fitness practices, health, that are practiced within the population in China, that were probably practiced before the modernization process. And so there is a lot of this kind of customs and folklore, also what academia could sometimes call folkloric practices, that are regrouped under the general term of Chinese traditional culture. And this has a very important role. It plays a very important role in the Communist Party rhetoric and the policies. It's a way to legitimize their rule over China, and also to position themselves as both safeguardian of traditional Chinese culture, which is of course seen as a very positive values in the national ideology and the national consciousness of Chinese people. And so when it comes to martial arts, of course, this large process is also happening in martial arts, even perhaps more than in other, as Chinese martial arts has become globally also kind of a beacon of Chinese excellent culture internationally, because of other reasons that of course I don't touch, because I'm focusing on the PRC. So the globalization of Wushu and martial arts, it's something that I don't touch. And so in China, there are the practices we will see today, something that is mainly created by institutions, mainly reproduced within institutional settings. We will see that in details. But martial arts, they are also practiced in a traditional way, let's say, but it's not because they are more ancient, but because they are related to Confucian social order and a ritual of apprenticeship from a master to a disciples. It is these practices, they are within the population, mostly outside of state-sponsored institutions, even though frameworks are overlapping. And in my research, my main focus was to address this broad process, and especially on the level of grassroots practitioners. So the main question I tackled in my overall research project was to see how these cultural policies and sport policies were impacting grassroots practitioners in their practice and in their discourse and in their daily life as well, group life. Today, the idea of today's presentation is to take this specific site of elite sport and to try to use the framework of Gary Alan Fine, which is an American sociologist that I met in the beginning of my cursus in Lausanne during a CUSO workshop. And when I arrived in these elite teams, I was surprised how what I was observing in these groups relates to the theoretical framework, and what I put under the concept of small group culture. So the idea is for me today, instead of speaking about my research project and the question I tackled, it's to use a specific site, one site, and to apply a framework and like the analytical tools provided by the literature of Gary Alan Fine. Before continuing, yeah, I will show you briefly a video of what is the Wushu elite sport version look like, so that everybody has an image of what the athletes and the coach and all the people who are working in these teams, what they are doing.
Sorry, I cannot make it. I cannot see the play button.
Is it in the middle or?
No. People online cannot hear you, but they hear the music.
Because yeah.
Yeah, so I suggest I change this strategy, and
or we can just shut the music. Or
yeah, I will.
If we switch on YouTube, okay.
Maybe let's go like this, and then I think now you can hear me. So the performance level, and then how acrobat movement. That's area where acrobat movement gets point to
Of course, I was at and actually, usually the athletes they finish with this kind of energetic set of movements at the end, and this is related to the level of performance. So you, by putting all your dynamic movements in the end, the judges will judge you at a higher level of performance, so you get a better grade. So this is actually the Wushu when it has been turned into an Olympic sport like that. There is many categories. So that was Tai Chi Chuan, which is one of most famous styles of Chinese martial arts, which is very popular. There is others. There is also a combat sport, which is pretty like kickboxing, but with specific. And these sports have been put in place after the Cultural Revolution at the beginning of the reform period in the late 70s, where China implemented elite sport first policy in order to create a reservoir of athletes that could compete in the Olympic disciplines and win medals. And in the meantime, they also took this traditional sport that was martial arts and created these new sets and these new ways of practicing. When I say institution created it, actually during the interviews, I was able to shed light on the fact that many grassroots practitioners were also mobilized to participate in the creation. And this is it comes to a complex phenomenon where institutions rely on grassroots relays and groups of practitioners to create new forms of practice that would be compatible with the government agenda. And there is a dialogue, but of course there is a power relationship because the Chinese government is reclaiming these traditional practice for its policies and social agenda, social transformation. So now I will speak about the fieldwork methodology and how I get into the elite teams. So when I So on the map, there is the 3 sites I was able to go and observe the practices and do interviews and other forms. I will come to it. So there is Beijing, Shanghai, and the site in Fuzhou City is the team for all the province of Fujian. So when I went there, I wanted to understand how the sport version, what was the relationship and perhaps the overlapping aspects in the sport version of martial arts and in the traditional sport version of martial arts. I accessed to these 3 sites mainly through personal connections and like a snowball effect where I would meet someone who could introduce me to other people, and that's how I accessed. I was looking for mainly, of course, interaction between individual, but mainly the interaction that related to the body techniques, to the transmission of the body techniques. I was interested in describing a framework of transmission, just like the one that I would observe in other groups. And it was, at the end, very difficult because most of the athletes who are in this team, they are already trained professional. So the team life in terms of movements, it's more rehearsal and small adjustments. And also people who are playing around with the movements, and I quote, playing around, I play with the movements to find new interesting and ways to do these movements in competition and get better grades, to kind of feel what this year the judge would expect of, for example, Tai Chi Chuan to be, and to find these precise spots. In Beijing municipality, I was able to observe the athletes during around 2 months. I would be able to access to some of the trainings, especially in the afternoon when the athletes are less in high pressure. Like on the morning, it's a very important training. In the afternoon, it's less important. So they would call. So the contacts would call me, you can come, and I would go. In Shanghai, I did only 1 weekend, just for one in-depth interview of someone who was of interest for me because of his activity. In Fujian province, this is perhaps the longest site I've been able to observe, but I could not really access into the training halls because there were secrecy culture where athletes and coaches was not happy to have an outsider who could eventually steal techniques and steal the way the athlete was doing their movement and innovating also. In regard of a broader ethnographic methodology, I had quite a lot of limitations. So first, I could not access all the training freely. Most of the information I got was from interactions between athletes, but outside of training sessions, mostly in the evening when they were gathering in free settings. Also, the language was a limitation as Chinese is not my mother tongue, and of course sometimes during the field, I was not able to understand everything, so I had to imagine, I had to recreate a lot. Also, how I took notes. So I will present dialogues in a few minutes. So these dialogues were not recorded on the spot. Sometimes you will see that sometimes I could remember and be sure of the original in Chinese. Sometimes in the evening, I was just like writing in English what I was thinking that was that the athletes was referring during discussions during the day. And so in the broad theoretical framework of Gary Allen Fine, where interactions between individuals are the core elements that you want to observe, he also focus on what is called like the mundane interaction, stuff that sometimes we as ethnographers could think as irrelevant, but in fact, the social life is happening in these very mundane and ordinary like life, like group life and interactions. And so I was not able to be as precise, also because of time restraints. I spent 2 months going through 3 or 4 times a week in Beijing. I've spent on 2 years of fieldwork here. I've spent perhaps 10 days within the infrastructures. And so because all of this, my talk and the way I articulate my data with the theory that I use in today's presentation is could be problematic in the way that my data are not as deep as it could be if the ethnography is done perhaps in more accessible sites and including language, including time, including also physical access, because these teams are kind of close and like in an ivory tower, and it's difficult for an outsider to come. Okay, so that's in mind. How long do I have still?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So okay. Yeah. So the elite Wushu team in space and time. So I will here try to draw a general picture of what is the athlete career, the life, who are these people, and where are they operating as groups, before going into the analytical part. So first, a few words about the demography of the athletes. So generally speaking, the team is composed by athletes, could be between 10 to 20 to 15 people in the specific section of the team. So for example, Taiji Chuan, which we saw would be different than other styles like South, like Nanchuan or other type of martial arts, but it's team within the same sports discipline, sports event. It is composed of the athletes, coaches, usually 2 technical coaches and 1 physical coach. There is a Lingdui in Chinese, which means the chief of the team, which is a relay for the Communist Party to control the group life. The athletes in the teams could be aged between 12 to 30 more years old. So the teams, they usually recruit kids when they graduate from primary school. and everyone would be engaged in a kind of national sport and education program. So they will all go to school, middle school, and then be engaged in university programs, at least on the bachelor degree, when after high school. The people usually comes from the area where the team is based. So for Fujian province, most of the people will be from Fujian, in Shanghai and Beijing. As it is smaller area, it's not unusual that they would select young athletes from nearby provinces in order to join the team. The important is that as you get selected as an athlete, you will have your tuition fees for your education paid, and everything will be provided to you when you reach 18. You will have also a small salary. And of course, on the financial level, the most money that an athlete can get is by getting a first place or second place or third place during a competition, and they have bonuses for that. So that's now a few words on the infrastructure. So the teams are all located in this kind of sports school. I call it sports center. Sometimes it could be also a vocational center, so they will provide not bachelor degree, but something like our maturité professionnelle in sport or in other discipline. The sports center is set as a Chinese university campus. So basically everything is provided within the infrastructure. There is, of course, training halls, the cafeteria, the dorms, classrooms, clinic, also small shops. Basically, normally the athletes doesn't have to go out. Actually, at least you are a senior athlete, you are not allowed to go out, especially in Beijing, where the center is located in the city center nearby a very crowded touristic place. And a big avenue, and so here the rules are pretty tight. So people are kind of stranded inside the infrastructure, and so of course this creates a very strong proximity between people, where they are always together. They sleep in the same dorms, they go to the same classroom, same training, they eat together. So the group is really the member ties are very strong, and also permanent, like happens permanently. An athlete in 1 year, so one season, would typically compete. So that would be the peak of the year for the athlete's life experience. The competition is usually set, like the national competition, which is important, is usually set in September or October. So the athlete would start in the spring and prepare for the competition. And then when the competition happens afterwards, he will enter, we will speak about that if we have the time, the winter training, where he will go more in the depth of technical and physical preparation, and more the competition is coming, more he will focus on the routines and the movements themselves. I was also able to conduct in-depth interviews with some of the athletes, and Most of them are recruited and start training martial arts very young. Most of them also are starting martial arts because another member of the family is introducing them to this world. There is also a shared narrative that like a certain amount of athletes told me that it was because I was bad in school, so my parents took me out of the public school system and get me into sports, hoping that I could make a career. Also, there is a shared narrative about their experience is that it's a very difficult life, and especially as a kid, where you are away from your parents, sometimes living alone or with the teammates for months before seeing the family members. And perhaps also to finish in terms of gender, because martial arts is a male-dominated activity, and here in the sport version, they try to create incentive to be more inclusive with female athletes. And so there are regulations for competition to make the team register the same amount of female and male athletes. And as far, it's difficult to me, I don't have statistics, but in the sports competition, usually the categories female and males have the same amount of athletes who participate. I think but this is also something that we should keep in mind as many other spaces in the Chinese society. Martial arts is dominated by male practitioners. Okay, so how does this relate to the analytical tool and framework, theoretical framework of Fine? So here's the bibliography. The most important is a lot of ideas that I will mobilize in a minute come from this article, where he tried to reassert that in sociology we should take small group and the study of small group for itself. Small groups, and this is also theorized in the people demography. So you can develop theory from group life, meaning that the group life and the interactions that are happening in small groups. I will speak about what is small groups in comparison to other could shed light in general social logics. And so we should consider as ethnographers and sociologues small groups as a space where we could conduct research on general and broad social process and developing theory from a small group. So here the definition of small group. So Fine and Harrington draw upon the Bales definition, who highlights that a small group is a face-to-face meeting. So yes, 5 minutes. The small group, we should be able to recognize all group members individually. So this reminds of the proximity of the groups I have observed. He continues to give a more theoretical, where he highlights 5 functions that are happening in small group settings. Controlling, it means that the group will structure individual behavior, and often the group dynamics reproduce larger social structures and perhaps ideology in the way the group is organized and the way individuals are behaving in them. But groups is also a place of contestation. So if the group is controlling and impacts individuals is the place where a larger structure can impact individual behavior. It's also the place where individual can contest and create opportunities and change for the statu quo. It is also an organizing space where the members of the group will create networks of relationship, and these networks can also extend outside of the groups or even beyond the group existing time and space. So, for example, if we take the sociology of the working place, we office workers are a group during the day, but this group tend to grow beyond this instrumental purpose and the time and space where so the office and the office work hours, and the ties between individuals could grow beyond this localized group and go, for example, when colleagues go to have an apéro after work, things that I'm thinking right now. There is a representing, and this will be important because so the group is where people will organize and will also create a representation about the world. So here they will create meanings and values, such as like a feeling of belonging to the group or social hierarchy specific to the small group. And these construct what how we see an affective culture, for example, when friendships are framed within a specific set of meaning. And so this is representing and allocating. It's where the group, the individual, see himself allocated something within the group, such as a status and also the hierarchy, status in the hierarchy. And so group, the individual is getting this in the group. And so in my case studies, the group members, as we see, they are always together. They share a small set of interactional orders. So they either train together, and so they interact in a training mode, or they eat together, or they go to class together. And but every time they are together, and the group, the team has a clearly defined group boundaries. So you have to be selected to be in the team. Also, and so everybody else would not apply. And also the clearly defined membership as the same from the same process. First, the team management aspect. So groups, they have an instrumental purpose. But as Fine argued, it's not only about that. Of course, the groups, I quote or I paraphrase, but the group doesn't exist only to get things done, so for their purpose, but they also from themselves to be a desirable place of action for the group. So in the team management, so the team management will have an impact on group members and the interactional order, so the way they interact to each other. So as I said, there is the chief of the team, Lingdue, which is here to report the team activities to the Communist Party bureau within the school, but also to report what has been decided in the Communist Party committee on the school to the. So he will be a very important key in the power structure and in the instrumentalization process that I spoke in the beginning. There is the coach who is responsible for the technical progression of the athletes, the physical coach who is responsible for all physical training. There will be also a staff for health, recovery, and then the athletes. The hierarchy is like this, even though the staff is something that is outside the immediate group team, but they have also daily interactions. And so here we see how the broader social order is impacting the group as this interaction between the chief of the team and one of the coach. So the chief say, you have to go to a meeting of the Communist Party. The coach says, the students can go. I don't have to go, right? And the chief respond, yes, you have to go. And so in the people interaction of these groups, this brothers the social order of this, like the administrative organization of the Chinese government is made being clearly visible in this case, and also concrete interaction for participants. So during the training, this is, I don't know if so during the trainings there was this secrecy, so I couldn't take my mobile phone or my camera during the training, but during the COVID pandemic, they decided to record and to live stream some of their training sessions. So this is from my phone. I was watching the streaming. As the times run, I will go quick. The training, what was interesting for me is that, of course, the athletes has to train for the purpose of the competition and win medals, but there were this affective culture that was created through the interaction between the athletes during the training. They would cheer up at each other. They will also regularly help each other on technical level. If someone seems to have a problem, people will help him, including coach, but most athletes. And so, as Fine would put it, there is a commitment, a collaborative commitment that is clearly taking place during the training, and this helped to solidify the group. So here we cannot see perhaps the other. So there is here two parts of the training. One group is doing this, and one other girl is doing another stuff. But so okay. So the competition, to the conclusion, yeah, okay. So yes, Yeah, so the things that I was asking myself through the analysis and was first, so I spoke about the collaborative commitment, the culture, the affective culture of the athletes, and it was interesting because when the athletes describe their relationship and their group dynamics, they refer to they use Confucian concepts such as like, so they see their community or their group as a brotherhood where everybody would be sister and brother. The coach would be a parental figure, and so the one things that I found interesting and I was asking myself is is this relationship with the Confucian social order, or the social order framed within Confucian lens, and also this small group culture dynamics. And also something that I was asking myself was the all-power relationship. I started to say how the Chinese government instrumentalizes these practices. And of course, here we have a very concrete example of how these policies are impacting the practitioners, the grassroots practitioners. And we see that the existence of the teams depends on the sport policy, as the team is entirely funded and selected with institutional resources. The institutions also create the sports scene because there wouldn't be any professional athletes, or at least way less, if it wasn't for these institutional centers. And so institutions, they are promoting their own version of martial arts and their own transmission framework. It has to be through coaches in sports centers, not through a master and a disciple. And so we see how this broad structural process of instrumentalization of culture is being made concrete and visible for individuals, and how it impacts their life. So yeah. That's finished for me. Thanks. I'm sorry for.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think that Bertrand Faker has a train to take. So
yeah,
that's why
that's
also
yeah,
I push up about the. So now a moment for discussion. Thank you.
That's okay. I just have to speak at the mic and.
Yeah.
Where? This one? Okay.
Non, moins bien.
Voilà. Okay.